I'm calling to order this hearing. This is a public hearing of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. The time is 12 noon, and we are in room 412 of the Johnny Wilson Building. The subject of this hearing, this is the first of three hearings the committee is having this afternoon, one right after the other. This hearing concerns Bill 26-166 entitled Closing of a Public Alley in Square 2068, SO 25-01801, Act of 2025. This legislation was introduced by Councilmember Matt Fruman on March 4th of this year. The stated purpose of Bill 26-166 is to order the closing of a 15-foot wide L-shaped portion of a public alley system in Square 2068, abutting lots 92, 811, and 818. Square 2068 is bounded by Connecticut Avenue and Porter Street and Ordway Street Northwest. I know that doesn't give all four sides. Folks who know the firehouse on Connecticut Avenue, the firehouse backs up on the alley, although I believe not the portion to be proposed to be closed. The record in this matter will be open for 2 weeks. It will close at 5 p.m. on Thursday, November 6th. Anyone who is testifying today wishes to submit anything additional, or they have a statement, but they didn't give it to us in writing, or anybody who's not here, or is here but is not testifying, anybody's allowed to submit, but they have to, if they want it included in the record, it has to be by 5 p.m. on Thursday, November 6th, 2025. I'm going to kind of leave my opening remarks there. Turn to my colleague, Matt Fruman, if you have an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mendelson. I gotta say, I was stunned that this hearing started exactly on time. I don't know that I've ever been to one like that. But it's good, and we want to be efficient today. It's important to, there's a lot on the agenda with other hearings that are coming. Looking forward to the testimony today. I've met with, I might have met with everybody who's here in the room in one form or another. One no. This is a project this is part of a project to add housing in Cleveland Park, very close to the avenue and in an area that could benefit new residents. In principle, I want to see this move forward as we look at the alley itself. It's a bizarre formation now with an alley boxing and a parking lot. And so it does seem that this can be done in a way that shouldn't have transportation impacts. Be very curious to hear all of the testimony on that subject. I recognize that there are neighbors nearby who are concerned about what may be coming, and I understand those concerns, and particularly concerned about what if it's something different than what they're seeing on paper today. And so I look forward to the testimony today. I also look forward to working with Mr. Martin and with the neighbors to make sure that we can have an understanding, if this moves forward, of how this can operate that's fair to everyone. I do, as I said when I met with the various neighbors over the weekend, hope we can get there, but want to work together to get there. So with that, I think I will stop and look forward to hearing the testimony.
Thank you, Councilmember. So I'm going to call witnesses. We have, I believe, 14 witnesses before we get to the government. So I think what I'll do is I'll start with Scott Kratz if he's here. I know he's here for a later hearing. Bob Ward, who's chair of the Cleveland Park Smart Growth. I believe he's online. Jay Bowes, who is commissioner with ANC 3C06. He is online. Patrick Brown. Steve Sintolas. That's Tsintolas. Uh, Violanda Bote, please come forward to the table. Brad Olander, come forward, please. I'm going to save the developer. That would be you, Mr. Utz. Is there any other witnesses with you? Okay, so I'll come back to you guys. Reed Thompson? Francis Rienzo? Come forward. Kathy Oken? And we may run out of seats, but we'll see what we can do. Paula Suarez is online. That works out perfectly. Okay, I'll call names again. We'll start with Bob. Scott Kratz, I believe, is not here. Bob Ward, you're online. 3 minutes. So those of you who are virtual, if you're in gallery view, you can see the clock. Please observe the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Fruman, members of the committee. My name is Bob Ward. I'm the chair of Cleveland Park Smart Growth. We're a neighborhood organization with over 500 members in the greater Cleveland Park and Woodley Park neighborhoods. We advocate for walkable, vibrant neighborhoods and more housing close to our shops and transit. Speaking today in support of the proposed alley closure behind the western side of Connecticut Avenue between Ordway and Porter Streets. The anticipated development on what is now a parking lot would be a positive addition to the Cleveland Park commercial area and neighborhood. Adding new residents to support our shops helps our local businesses. Its close proximity to Metro, which is literally right there, and bus lines also right there, means that new residents can live car light or car free, as many of their neighbors do today. The abundance of alley access in this particular block means that necessary services such as trash removal can still happen without interruption if this L-shaped portion of the alley is closed. And while this alley closure is not directly linked to the proposed development, it is a necessary first step, which is why we support it. And I think even if for some reason the future development doesn't pan out or is delayed, the closure of this alley does not negatively impact the surrounding alley users. Again, this is a well-served area from an alley standpoint and how people access their properties or the trash gets picked up. So our organization, Cleveland Park Smart Growth, asked the council to approve this legislation. Thanks, Councilmember Fruman, for offering it, and appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. And we don't have a copy of your statement. If you could submit that.
I'm doing that right now. Thank you.
Great. Jay Bose?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, Chair Mendelson, members of the committee, thank you. My name is Jay Bose. I'm the ANC Commissioner for SMD 3C6 in Cleveland Park. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of ANC 3C as a whole, as authorized by our commission chair when we voted unanimously to support this alley closure on March 17th of this year. The alley sits in my SMD, and so I'm happy today to be speaking in support of this closure. This proposal really builds on extensive community engagement by the developer, Martin Diamond. They've been a solid presence in our community for years and own several of the retail properties that connect to this alley. I make that point to underscore this is not a story of an out-of-town developer forcing their way into our community. They are embedded in Cleveland Park, and they're active participants in Cleveland Park's daily life. This particular project, the alley closure and future construction, is something we've been tracking for a long time on ANC 3C. Martin Diamond has spoken before our commission at least twice since I've been on the commission. And then going back further, they were in conversations with my predecessor going back to March of 2024. So you may hear that, you know, this proposal is coming out of nowhere, that it's in some way surprising that the community wasn't informed of this proposal. I want to assure you that Martin Diamond has been speaking with residents, they've been speaking with members of the community and with owners of nearby buildings. As a commissioner, I myself have heard from a number of residents about this project, including many of the people testifying today. Residents have raised concerns about factors like trash pickup, noise, traffic during construction. And while those concerns are valid, based on the engagements that we've had, ANC3C believes that Martin Diamond has heard these concerns, taken them seriously, and are keeping them in mind as they advance their plans for this project. So I want to just underscore that Martin Diamond has really honored the public process that our city abides by and has acted in nothing but good faith. So I'm asking you to support this alley closure today and help our community make better use of an underutilized space in our neighborhood. Because we are in a crisis of housing affordability, both in Ward 3 and across the DMV. Rent prices are growing increasingly unaffordable, and especially in light of all of the disruptions to our local economy here in DC over the last year, we really need housing prices to start coming down. And one of the most crucial ways we can do that is by adding more housing stock. And while Martin Diamond is not proposing a large building, a small amount of new housing is better than none. And while construction can be inconvenient and can impact the community for a certain amount of time, the impacts of not having enough housing will be felt by our communities for years to come. So I'm asking you to approve this project on behalf of ANC 3C. Thank you, and happy to discuss further.
Thank you, Commissioner. When did the ANC vote?
That was March 17th of 2025.
And could you send us a copy of the resolution, please?
Yes, of course. I submitted it with my written testimony, but I'm happy to email it again if that's helpful.
Yeah, I have the letter. Oh, I just have a letter.
Okay, it should be on the second page of that, but I'll submit it again.
Yeah. All right, do submit the resolution. Patrick Brown, Steve Centolas, Violanda Bote, am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes, that's fine.
Please,
Okay.
please proceed.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify here today. My name is Violanda Botet, and I'm here to request today that you postpone any decision on closing the public alleyway until it can be considered as part of the overall development site project on that site. By way of background, I have lived in Cleveland Park for over 30 years, 10 years in the home which directly faces the public alley. I have 2 girls that went through DC public schools, and I ride the DC Metro daily. I don't even own a car. 3 reasons why the council should consider postponing a decision on closing the public alley. First, the public alley is just that, public land. The city should not give up public space to a private developer without a clear and agreed upon understanding of what the public will receive in return. Otherwise, it's just a gift. Moreover, if the public alley is closed, the value of the consolidated property will rise. The developer can then flip the property to another developer, profiting again from public land. But for plans to build a residential building on that site, there would be no clear reason to close the public alley. The city's just beginning its review of those plans. And by closing the public alley now, the council is boxing in the city as its agencies begin its review, and without good reason. I also note that nothing guarantees that the parcel will be in fact developed over the long term. A recently completed residential development just 2 blocks from the alley has yet to sell. The public alleyway could be closed for years before any development begins, if that development begins at all. So why close the alley up front? A second reason to postpone this decision is to allow the city to review proposals for construction on that site. The current proposal seems to set the residential building back and building a multi-story building, including a 9 to 12 car underground parking in a cramped backyard. The size of the backyard of a single family home should be carefully considered. A third reason to postpone decision on the closure is that the developer did not share his site plans with the neighbors. In March of 2025, the developer approached us and asked that in light of his proposal, we asked him if he intended to do any further development on the site. The developer wrote back, I wouldn't imagine any immediate changes to the alley lot other than reorienting the trash to make it more effective, cleaner for collection, and adding parking for our tenants. Although long-term, I could look to evaluate some improvements, expanding of the building. We have never met with our ANC commissioner. We sought to meet with our ANC commissioner. We have never met or had a conversation with our ANC on this proposal. And in light of that, I urge you to postpone a decision on the closure of the public alleyway today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Motet. Brad Olander.
Thank you. Dear Chairman and members of the council, my name is Brad Olander. I live at 2917 Ordway Street with my wife and children. We've lived in our home since 2003. Please consider the following request for the following reasons. Please do not vote to close the alley until there is a detailed project plan that is reasonably agreeable to the residents living close to the parcel who will be impacted by this building project. Such a plan would include binding assurances on the scope and scale of the structure to be built, a construction management plan to ensure minimal disruption during the construction period, and plans to ensure the additional traffic generated by operating a new multifamily building does not impede residents' access to the alleys and private driveways. The reasons for this would be that closing the alley is the first step in consolidating the parcel. The new zoning overlay being enacted nearly doubles the size of the structure that could be built by right on the consolidated parcel. Such a structure would have a material negative impact on residents close to the parcel. As the plans submitted in January were developed under the zoning in place at the time, which is the floor/CP zoning, there has not been a study or engagement of the community related to a larger project. The aggregate interests of all parties, including the owner and developer, would best be served and balanced by ensuring that there are binding assurances that the development of the lot must conform to the floor/CP zoning, and ensuring a construction management plan is in place to protect the current residents' right to quiet enjoyment of their homes during construction, prior to closing the alley and enabling parcel consolidation. My primary concerns are congestion, the scale of the new building, and management during the construction period. The alleyway and the surrounding streets are currently congested. Increasing traffic from new resident vehicles and more building services will worsen the congestion. Furthermore, the alleyway, the throughput alleyway, abuts the parking for the Cleveland Park Fire Station. Pushing more traffic into the system will conflict with the already overtaxed firefighter parking. Regarding the scale of the building, the current plans for the 4-story building that we have seen, 3 plus a penthouse, were created nearly a year ago when the zoning was 4/CP, which limits height to 55 feet. The zoning for the subject lots is being changed to 8A/CP. This increases the allowable height to 90 feet, in addition to more than doubling the FAR. Any structure built on this site will significantly reduce the light and airflow to the surrounding properties. The higher the structure, the more pronounced reductions will be. So we would request binding assurances that the building would conform to the 4CP zoning. Quickly, the construction period can be extremely disruptive. The site area is a box canyon fronted by multi-story buildings on all sides. Dust, diesel fumes, and noise don't have anywhere to abate but otherwise back into the neighborhood. So I realize my testimony is quite a bit longer, but it just details the issues and concerns that we have seen from past and similar projects that we would like to make sure are mitigated and thought about upfront before such a plan is approved. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Olander.
If I may say, I think we were all told we had 4 minutes to make presentations. So I think all of us planned on 4 minutes, and that's why we're sort of cramming things.
Sure.
So, thank you.
Reed Thompson, I believe, is not here. Grab somebody's chair. Ms. Potet, I'm going to have a question for you, so don't disappear from the table. And Mr. Who is it, Mr. Thompson? No, I've lost my place here. You are, yes,
Mr.
please. I want you to proceed.
This on? Chairman Mendelson, members of the committee, my name is Reed Thompson. I live with my family in a townhouse at 2919 Ordway Street, a stone's throw away from the site in question. We have a clear view of the site from our bedroom and sunroom windows. My kids, 3 and 7, have biked and sledded around it. As it currently stands, this bill that's under consideration would be a bad deal for the city and our community. It's a giveaway, giving public land to a private developer while getting the city and our community nothing in return. The developer would see the value of his property immediately and dramatically increase, while our community would lose the strongest leverage we have to ensure that any development on this site proceeds responsibly. With any development so close to our house, I would be concerned about the effects of blasting and construction on our house and our neighbors' houses, particularly given that the plans include underground parking on a site that was a former rock quarry, noxious fumes that our kids will have to breathe, trash and rodent management with all of the adjacent restaurants, traffic management, and so on. These challenges arise with any construction, but they seem much harder to manage on this particular small enclosed site on a heavily trafficked alley surrounded by homes and businesses. All we've seen are the vaguest of plans for how to deal with these issues, no specific proposals for how to manage these challenges. The developer has made no attempt to contact me, nor has our ANC commissioner made any attempt to engage us in any discussions, despite throwing his support wholeheartedly behind the developer from the outset. I would urge 2 things. First, postponing any vote on the bill until we have more clarity on the building and construction management plans, including how those plans might be affected by the new zoning rules. And second, changing the bill from a giveaway to a fair deal. Make the developer pay fair value for the land he will get, just as the government must pay just compensation when taking private property, taking into account the site's future use for development. That would reduce the chance that the developer will just monetize the increased value through a quick sale of the property, scuttling any representations he might be making. Also, condition the transfer of public land in a way that would bind the developer, as well as any future purchaser, to a particular plan. 3 stories rather than 8, with detailed construction management requirements that will allow neighbors to continue to live in and enjoy their homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Francis Rienzo?
Yes, hi, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Fruman. My name is Francis Rienzo, and I'm owner at 2817 Ordway Street Northwest. My wife and I lived there for several years after we purchased that historic row house in 2000, and I've maintained it as a rental property since. While we greatly appreciate the intention of Martin Diamond, the council, and the zoning commission to incentivize development of family-friendly housing in Cleveland Park, we share the concerns of our friends and neighbors that once the alley is closed, the parcels are consolidated, and the new Connecticut Avenue zoning overlay is enacted, the land adjacent to our residential property would immediately be entitled to, and without meaningful community input, protections of the current residents, would be entitled to significant additional density and dramatically increased height limitations that are inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood and are incompatible with the homes nearby that are not being redeveloped. That is why, Mr. Chairman, I ask that you do not proceed to a vote on Bill 26-166 until binding assurances are obtained that the owner, and I think perhaps more importantly, a potential future owner that has less of a personal investment in the Cleveland Park neighborhood, that those owners ensure that development bordering existing residential structures is consistent with their continued use as homes during and after construction. Let's make that redevelopment livable. A construction management plan is in place that protects the ability of nearby residents to continue to live in their homes during construction without undue disruption, and that the design and operation of the subject property, once completed, does not impede neighboring residents' access to alleys, streets, private driveways with trash containers, trash trucks, delivery vehicles, and other traffic serving the new development and serving 3500 Connecticut Avenue. If, after thoughtful consideration, the council deems it appropriate to grant the alley closure, we ask that you do so only conditionally and in a binding way so as to ensure that any future development protects neighboring residents during and after construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rienzo. Kathy Oken?
My name is Kathy Oken. I'm a tenant at 2817 Ordway Street. I've lived in Cleveland Park at this address as a renter for more than 5 years through all of the construction related to the Red Line Metro that included digging up Ordway Street and a portion of my garden, which I understood is necessary to keep the station from flooding, and through the day and night construction and reconstruction of the Cleveland Park Streetscape project, which was steps from my front door. Though I value the hum and bustle of city life, it was tiresome, noisy, and dirty to live in the affected area. At the same time, I support the local grocery stores, enjoy the farmer's market, have a membership at the local gym, take advantage of the restaurants, pay my rent and taxes in a timely fashion, and volunteer at a local residential facility for HIV and cancer survivors. My visiting grandchildren are able to take advantage of local businesses, the library, the zoo, and the parks that remind all of us of our great neighborhood. In general, I'm grateful for where I live and what I have. Now I and my neighbors understand that you are being asked to approve an alleyway closure as the first step to erecting a high-rise apartment building in the lot behind my house. I understand the issues related to housing density and its importance to the future of the district, but all housing is not good housing. Until we have more detail on the benefits and drawbacks of this project, including timing, size and scope, environmental impact, and logistics, I ask that you postpone any vote, as incremental as it may seem, that will move this project forward. Some of my questions focus on how much of this construction phase and once the project is completed. Others include traffic management in an area where congestion is often a problem, as delivery trucks, utility trucks, and people looking to make quick pickups from the restaurants on Connecticut Avenue leave their cars and trucks in the alleyways. Finally, I think it's fair to ask whether current renters and owners who share my concerns will have to leave the neighborhood to accommodate the construction, since this project, as we understand it now, includes underground parking virtually feet away from the last excavation project. These and other questions have not been adequately addressed, if at all. We had our first meeting with our council person last weekend. Our ANC commissioner has never reached out to us. Obviously, there is a lot left to the imagination. Perhaps this is a project that will work, but right now that is not clear, has not been fairly articulated, and should not be allowed to proceed. Therefore, in the name of good governance, please postpone any vote on closing the alleyway until we have more information about the entire project and what it would mean for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oken. Paula Suarez.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Council. My name is Paula Suarez, and my family owns a home built in the L-shaped alley in the square behind Connecticut Avenue. We do support thoughtful development of the corridor, but we're asking you to defer the alley closure decision until a proper evaluation is completed and neighbors are meaningfully engaged. Why we think a deferral is necessary. First, decisions should follow clear vetted plans and not precede them. Right now, there's no binding plans finalized showing how the project will function on the ground. The proposal could change, especially with pending regulatory updates, and a public alley closure is irreversible. Please sequence the decision after there is a firm reviewed plan and the public can see and understand it. Second, alley logistics are not a detail. They're actually the backbone of safety and daily life in Cleveland Park. This alley is how restaurants on Connecticut Avenue get serviced, how workers and delivery vehicles move, and how pedestrians, including our children, circulate to our homes. We need a clear operations plan for that address and for that building. We want to know where loading will occur and how often, vehicle turning movements and conflict points, pedestrian access and ADA continuity, emergency vehicle access and egress, trash, grease, and utility service without blocking neighbors, construction staging and safe passage through the build. And without this, we risk shifting congestion, noise, fumes, and safety hazards into the block's living spaces. Third, there has been no serious good faith engagement with impacted neighbors. We've tried to meet, we've asked to workshop solutions, we have asked to see alternatives. To date, the developer has not engaged nor worked with us to understand the site constraints, the daily patterns, or feasible mitigations. Projects that succeed in DC are those that are shaped with the people who live next to them. Fourth, policy changes now under consideration could materially impact and alter this project. With regulatory updates in motion, locking in a street alley and transferring of public goods to a private developer, before the rules are all settled, invites a mismatch between public commitments and the final outcome. Aligning this sequence, rules first and disposition second, protects the public interest and reduces the risk for the developer as well. Fifth, any serious evaluation of a closure of the alley should be conditioned. At a minimum, the conditions should include a binding sign and massive envelope tied to the specific program, locking in the building's footprint and maximum size so that it cannot quietly grow later, and make that approval apply only to a specific project on the table. Any bigger or different plans must come back to the public. An approved construction management and access plan and loading operations plan enforceable with fines. Safety measures, small business continuity, commitments for Connecticut Avenue restaurants, clear loading windows for the grease and the waste protocols. Neighbor protections from noise, dust mitigation, monitored vibration limits with pre-construction surveys, insurance and compensation for loss of revenue for rental properties, damage repair guarantees, and 24/7 community liaison. Performance security, and a reversion of covenants if the project materially changes or doesn't proceed on schedule. In closing, Chairman and Council members, this is not a no, it's a request to do this right, to align with Vision Zero, to align with the small business vitality, with housing goals, and basic neighborhood safety. Please defer the alley closure decision until there's a concrete publicly reviewed plan, genuine engagement with affected households, and enforceable conditions that ensure the benefits of the development without exporting its risks to our block. Thank you for your time and for safeguarding both the progress and the people who live within it every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Suarez. There'll be one round of questions. Ms. Potet, so your testimony, and I think there were a couple others who said this, the developer did not meet with the community?
The developer reached out by email and said that he was planning to request to close the public alley. And then he invited us out and walked us around individually, and that was about it. We asked him, what else are you going to do besides close the public alley? And that's when he said that quote, all I'm going to do is close it because we have to clean the public alley. It's, and he didn't say anything about building a residential building there. Yet,
So how did you hear about the development plans?
When the ANC agenda came out in the Cleveland Park listserv.
I did want to note for Mr. Thompson, because he had this comment, um, that make the developer pay fair value for the land he will get. I was looking at the surveyor's testimony and it actually does not have this. Almost always we find that these alleys are not held in fee simple by the city. In other words, they're not owned by the city. It's a right of way. It's a kind of an interesting law with regard to rights of way. So that it's not city land that we then sell, so to speak, to the property owners. Typically, they have a right to the land if the city if the city decides it no longer needs the right of way for public purposes. So I think the last time we actually charged an applicant for an alley closing was when they essentially illegally seized and built an extension of their house on the right of way. And we said, well, you're going to have to pay. And that was maybe 8 years ago. I just wanted to say that. Let me check for a second here. Mr. Bose, Commissioner Bose,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
have you met with the neighbors about this project?
I have exchanged emails with numerous residents, as including several of the people who've testified today. And I am sorry to hear that people are saying that I have not met with anybody. I have been on emails with most of the people, I would say.
But you didn't have like an SMD meeting?
We had an ANC meeting of the entire commission.
Yeah, that was not my question. You did not have an SMD meeting?
No, I did not in person convene the residents of my SMD, but I have been exchanging emails with residents about this and offered in every email exchange to discuss this issue in person.
And did
on it.
these emails, were they before or after the ANC met?
Before, multiple days before.
After the notice came out or before the notice came out?
I believe it was after the notice came out. I understand people saw it on the listserv and reached out to me with their questions and concerns. I replied to, I believe, the vast majority. I do apologize to the community if I left one out, but I tried my best to get back to every single person, and I shared my understanding of the plans and offered to discuss further, and nobody took me up on it.
Commissioner, the testimony I'm hearing from the neighbors is they're not sure what the development plans are, and that they don't have a commitment from the developer what the development plans are. I'm assuming that's true for the ANC as well. Am I correct?
So what we have seen, Chair, have been site plans of the alley site, as well as hypothetical renderings of what a building on the site could look like, but not a finalized architectural plan. My understanding is that it was too early in the process for that finalized plan. What we have seen are site plans and various documentation kind of outlining what Martin Diamond had in mind for the site.
So the development could be 4 stories, which I think is the current zoning, or it could be 9 stories under the revised zoning.
Well, 3 stories and a penthouse is my understanding of the plan as it currently stands. I don't believe the site would be, I've heard the word high rise. I don't believe the site would be suitable for a high rise. And I don't think that's what the developer has in mind either.
Thank you. Councilmember Fruman.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mendelson, and thank you to all of the witnesses who have testified. I will say there is going to be a fair amount of back and forth about who talked to whom when, and for me, I think you folks reached out to my office maybe on a Thursday, and we met on a Saturday morning, and so I don't want to be backward looking about this. I want to be forward looking about this. And I had said to you, and I've said to Mr. Martin, that I would like to convene a meeting of the neighbors and Mr. Martin and his team to talk about where this is all at. That way, I don't have to make a determination between the he said, she said about previous communication, I will know about it. I'm not going to ask I'm not going to ask any questions here because we met a few days ago and spoke at some length, and we'll meet again sometime soon. And so I think that's the place to try to have a conversation that's collaborative as possible. I hear the concern about one thing is proposed, will the thing that gets built be very different from the one thing that has been proposed? And so that's a conversation that we have to have. I don't think a high rise is a thing that is in the cards for a variety of different reasons. But if I were a neighbor, I would be concerned, is this going to be different than what is proposed? The other sets of concerns about how will the construction happen, if I were a neighbor, I would be concerned about how the construction was going to happen. And that happens in every one of these kinds of projects. And then fully understanding how it's all going to work. I mean, the way it is now is the traffic counts on how often is the part of the alley that's going to close used. It's not very much. But how's it supposed to work going forward? And I think that's been outlined, but I think we can have more conversations about it. So my main thing here is I am in the camp that thinks adding housing in a reasonable way is a positive thing to do. But can we do it in a way that checks the box of the concerns that you all are raising? I like to think that we can, and I want to be part of a conversation to try to navigate to get there. The one person who I think had to rush in his testimony, I hear you, Ms. Bullitt, that you thought it was 4 minutes and it was 3. I feel like you covered it. Mr. Olander, I felt like felt a little bit cut off by that timing. So I guess my one question, Mr. Olander, is if there's something that you want to add that you felt like you weren't able to get to in your testimony, and I want to give you the chance to add it.
Thank you, council member. I appreciate it. I think the primary gist was that the construction period and the things that we have seen, and that for the last being there for 22 years now, that is very much an area where everything that's created in that site drift back. And regardless of the wind direction, it doesn't have to be directly from the east. And so when these diesel generators run for 24 hours a day to provide power, which is what happened at the building that was built next to the library a block away, for months that thing ran 24 hours a day. Those types of things really make noxious fumes. The houses are over 100 years old. The windows don't seal perfectly. So I think a plan that ensures that doesn't happen, that there is power that's provided to the site during construction that is either battery powered or that's tapping into a hard line is critical. The other aspect is the damage aspect that Mr. Thompson referenced. We have homes that have cracks in the walls. Most of them are brick, and they occurred when the metro was built. The metro site was much deeper and much further away, and the vibrations transfer through the bedrock. Even when they were just resurfacing the streets, the large, I guess, steamrollers is what I used to call them as a kid, would shake the houses when they went over at the surface level. So I think it's not an overstated concern to say that there is reason to worry about permanent damage depending on how the excavation of the bedrock is performed. And so I think that having a plan to manage those two critical aspects during construction is something that should happen before this thing proceeds and advances.
Well, I appreciate that.
And thank you very much for allowing me to finish. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I hear you. I do think a challenge here, and it's a little making light, but choreographing. I think Mr. Martin needs clarity to proceed. You want clarity about where it's going to go. Figuring out how that gets managed, I think, is a challenge. I don't think it's an impossible challenge. I don't have the answer to how you do it, but I think that just want to acknowledge it as a challenge. I also, part of the testimony, Cleveland Park has been a little bit traumatized in that the construction that's happened, I think Ms. Oken, you talked about the streetscape project that went on for a long time. And then you had the work on the drainage for the metro and the water so a lot has happened. And I get it that folks in the neighborhood could feel like, please, can't let it stop. In a certain sense, it's never gonna stop. There's always change, but there is a certain sense of accumulation of hardships. That doesn't mean we can't do anything else going forward, but it does go to the concerns about how it would be managed. And let's keep up the conversation on that. And Violetta, I'll let you have the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Fruman. I just wanted to address one issue which I didn't get into my testimony, which is this issue of whether we look back or look forward. One of the things that has been a concern here is that the procedure for taking this issue to the ANC was not satisfied. I mean, our council member did not, or our ANC representative did not meet with us, did not follow those procedures. The developer did not disclose what was happening. So it's not just a question of looking back. The question is this issue properly before the city council at this point? We have a public participation process that was circumvented. It leapfrog. And it's okay, I understand Bob Ward. I'm with Bob Ward, but he is only part of a bigger group. The neighbors themselves in this single member district were not consulted. So it's not a question of just looking back. It's a question of, is this issue properly before you? And I also support what you've said. Thank you.
You are over your time.
I'm done. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your testimony.
Thank you, each of you, for your testimony, and those of you online as well. Let me call Jeff Utz, Director at Golston and Stores, who is the attorney, I assume, for the developer, and Christopher Martin, and Jamie Milanovich. Mr. Utz, you're in charge.
Great. Thank you, Chairman. We can go ahead and get started. First, I'll just say a few words and pass it over to Chris Martin, and then we'll have the transportation consultant say a few words. She's joining online. If we could pull up the presentation, that would be very much appreciated. I'll just start off. First of all, good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson, Councilmember Fruman, members of the council who are watching. My name is Jeff Utz from the law firm of Goulston and Stores, which serves as land use counsel to the applicant. Mr. Martin, the owner and the developer, will share more specific information about the project anticipated in this alley that the closing will facilitate. So I'll just provide you a brief overview of the proposed alley closing itself. Obviously, the alley is located in the Cleveland Park neighborhood along the commercial corridor of Connecticut Avenue. It is currently in between a lot that is surface parking and trash area. The proposal is for a 15-foot wide portion of the alley to be closed that is approximately 2,175 square feet of land area. Next slide, please. This is the actual plat that was drafted by the surveyor that shows the 2,175 square feet. The alley closing satisfies all the applicable requirements of the DC code, specifically section 9202.01 and flowing thereafter. The subject segments of the alley are not necessary for alley or other transportation purposes and can be closed without disrupting vehicular access to any property. The alley segments are redundant with other alley components in this square. The alley closing will allow consolidation of lots 92 and 811 into one parcel and will facilitate the construction of a new residential development with approximately 9 units. Closing the alley is a vital component of the project, which effectively cannot move forward without the approval of an alley closing. The project is consistent with the Cleveland Park neighborhood mixed-use zoning and that the Office of Planning has proposed and which is currently being reviewed by the Zoning Commission and the current zoning as well. The applicant has had extensive outreach with ANC 3C and has the support of the ANC. Mr. Martin can speak further to this, but I'm available to answer any questions that the committee might have and appreciate the opportunity to speak today. And I'll follow up with a few words at the end, but for now, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Martin.
Mr. Martin?
Great. Good afternoon, Chairman, Council Member. Thank you for the time today. My name is Chris Martin. I am the owner of 3500 Connecticut and the lot in question here. I'm a long-term DEC resident and have lived in Cleveland Park on Lowell Street for 11 years with my wife and children. During my residency at Cleveland Park, I was the chair of the HSA and the LSAT Eaton Elementary and was very active in the community through that time. Through my leadership at Eaton, I became acutely aware of the housing deficit we have in Cleveland Park and the need for more family-style units. So as I approached this alley closure process, the end goal is to be able to build housing. But I want to be able to clarify that the rear parking lot is an artifact of the horse and buggy days with highly underutilized alleys, which we'll hear more about from our traffic consultant. And there are also some operational challenges that come along as well. As an independent parking lot servicing our retail tenants, the alley parcel cannot accommodate housing. I want to be 100% clear about this. The work that the Zoning Commission is considering right now from Office of Planning cannot be achieved unless this alley closing happens. It will not support even a single home right now. So if we don't close the redundant part of the alley, we can't take the next step to be able to determine what a project could look like here. There are two variances that I did want to speak to relative to that binary nature. The first is from the party status, we front both sides of the alley for one of the closures, and we front 50% of the alley for the other closure. The neighbor to the north is in full support of the alley closure. They're not here to testify today. And what I've expressed to the ANC, to the council member, and also to the neighbors is that the next step in this, which is very costly and takes a lot of time to go through the planning, is planning for the HPRB step. And because this is in a historic district, will require a lot of coordination together to be able to figure out what this building can become. And everybody in this room today is a party to that conversation. So I see this as a binary situation. Without the alley closure, there's no conversation for what the building could become with HPRB. The other thing that I wanted to speak to is that I agree with the concerns about disruption. Our 200 linear front building is home to 4 restaurants, 2 office tenants, and 2 retailers. They comprise 1,000 visitors a week and 100 employees. I'm very sensitive to their disruption. I do have a couple quick slides for orientation if I could have some more time, but I understand that I'm over my time. So
You can go a little longer.
thank you. So the next slide illustrates the pass-through of the Ordway Alley. This illustrates the view looking from the northwest to the northeast, excuse me, with the building of our immediate neighbor who passes from Connecticut Avenue to the pass-through alley in the back to illustrate the scale. And the other view looks down toward the entrance off of Ordway with the 3 townhouses. To the right, the aerial clearly shows the building immediately next to us that passes through the whole alley, the fire station that passes through the whole alley, the former Walgreens, and then an apartment building. So for some reason, our lot is uniquely cut off from what our neighbors have. The next image, please. On the site plan, the one element that I wanted to call out on this is the elevation change. Along Connecticut Avenue, you'll note that our retail buildings enter and off of grade, but the second floor of the retail buildings exit on grade to the alley. There's a 12-foot grade change from Connecticut Avenue to the alley. And then to the rear of the alley, for the pass-through alley from Ordway to Porter, there's another 6 feet of differential. So there's an 18-foot difference from Connecticut to the back of the site. When we talk about building height is measured off of Connecticut Avenue's elevation. The next slide, please. And then here are just some subject renderings. Again, these are theoretical. There's a lot of design work that has to go into this. There's geotechnical work that has to go into this to determine what we can dig and can't dig. There's a lot of money and time that needs to go into the next stage, which would be part of the HPRB process in conjunction with the neighbors. So this illustrates a parking garage, 3 stories of residential, and then a penthouse. And what we tried to do was to index the height roughly off of the size of the building to the north to keep the massing in line. So if you look at the image to the right, that illustrates what it would look like from Ordway Street. So sort of blending into the building behind. And the building on the bottom is looking from across Connecticut Avenue back at our site, with just the penthouse kind of popping up over existing buildings. So these are the level of detail that we really need to refine if indeed this alley, there's a possibility to close this alley through the public process and through the HPRB process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Ms. Jamie Milanovich?
Hi, good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson, Councilmember Fruman, and members of the council. My name is Jamie Milanovich, and I'm a principal associate at Wells & Associates, a traffic engineering and transportation consulting firm. We were retained by Martin Diamond Properties to evaluate the traffic impacts associated with the proposed alley closing. In 2024, we conducted an evaluation of the alley system in Square 2068, which included identifying the current uses of the alley system, quantifying the volume of traffic using the portions of the alley to be closed, and identifying the types of vehicles using the alleys. The alley currently serves the restaurants at 3500 Connecticut Avenue, residential and retail uses at 3522 Connecticut Avenue, engine company number 28, and the adjacent 3 townhomes abutting the alley that front on Ordway Street. Based on our observations, which were conducted over a 2-day period in January 2024, the portions of the alley that are proposed to be closed primarily serve the delivery and service vehicles for the restaurants that make up 3500 Connecticut Avenue. Those delivery and service vehicles stop in the north-south portion of the alley to be closed, directly behind the restaurants, since there is no on-site loading facilities at present. Observations of the alley further indicated that the northbound left turn from this portion of the alley onto the east-west portion of the alley is very difficult to maneuver, even for passenger vehicles, making it an unattractive option for vehicles wishing to pass through. The volume of traffic using the portions of the alley to be closed is minimal. We conducted traffic counts between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. on both of the observation days. The volume of traffic using those portions of the alley that are to be closed ranged from 5 trips to 11 trips per day. A delivery truck to the 3500 Connecticut Avenue property accounted for 2 of those trips, and delivery or service vans to the 3500 Connecticut property accounted for 6 of those trips. Very few cars use the portions of the alley that are to be closed as a through trip. Just 3 over the 2-day period traveled through the portions of alley to be closed. It is my understanding that Mr. Martin also conducted subsequent traffic counts in the alley this past July and counted just 9 vehicles using the portion of the alley to be closed on July 9th and just 3 vehicles on July 10th, further substantiating the counts that we conducted last year. None of the other abutting properties have direct vehicular access to or from the portions of the alley to be closed. Trash pickup would continue to be served in the same manner that it is today for all of the abutting properties. Trash pickup for the redeveloped 3500 Connecticut Avenue site would be provided via the remaining north-south alley that connects Ordway to Porter Street. The proposed redevelopment of 35 Connecticut Avenue would also include a loading area on private property adjacent to and east of the remaining north-south alley to ensure that delivery vehicles to 3500 Connecticut Avenue do not block the alley. That concludes my testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you, each of you, for your testimony. So I do have some questions. I'm not sure how long this will take. Mr. Martin, I'm a little confused. In your statement, in the first paragraph, you say you are owner of 3500 CT LLC, but then you sign it on behalf of Martin Diamond Properties as manager.
Apologies. The way we structure our LLCs, the manager, that's correct. In the first paragraph, I should have written as manager of 3500 Connecticut as opposed to as owner.
So the LLC is the owner.
Correct. And I'm the managing member of the LLC.
Okay. Also, I note that Ms. Milanovic said that she conducted a survey in January 2024. That says to me that you've been looking at this site for roughly a year and a half, if not longer. So why have you not met with the community before now?
Well, so we had a preliminary ANC meeting in 2023 with the prior SMD. And then as I think some of the neighbors testified, I invited the neighbors to come walk the alley with me.
More recently, after the more recent ANC meeting?
Correct. No, before the ANC meeting. In advance of the spring 2024 ANC meeting, I invited the neighbors to come out. Nobody responded. I then said, I'll stand outside for 2 afternoons and wait for anybody who wants to come talk to me. Only Vilanda came to speak to me during that time, and one of the tenants.
And that was in 2024?
That's correct, yes. So in advance of the ANC meeting, one neighbor came to speak with me, and one renter came to speak with me. Oh, sorry, 25, excuse me.
All right, let's start over.
Sorry.
So there was an ANC meeting in 2024?
That's correct.
Okay, when in 2024?
I'm sorry?
When in 2024?
That was sometime in the spring of 2024.
Okay. You, of course, would not be responsible for the notice, but was there much community participation regarding this project at that ANC meeting in 2024?
There was not.
Okay. Then, and did the ANC take any position at that time?
It was the purpose of the meeting was to be able to talk about the concept of whether this is something we should explore further. And so there were no plans to share at that time. And so the feedback from the ANC at the time was that this was something that they would encourage us to explore further.
Okay.
So there's not a resolution.
Okay. And then you went back to the ANC this year in, I think, March?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And it was the neighbors testified that they learned of this when they saw the notice on the Cleveland Park listserv. It was after that, but before the ANC meeting, that you then offered to meet with some of the neighbors.
That's correct, yes.
And you offered to meet by way of being there at the site for neighbors to meet you.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that was direct email to the 4 building owners immediately adjacent to the property. So
I'm sorry.
So that was to the 4 buildings adjacent to the property. So the owners and the residents of those buildings.
Is with whom you offered to.
That's correct.
I heard one of the witnesses earlier say that, it might have been the ANC commissioner, that your plan is to build 3 stories plus a penthouse?
Roughly that height, that's correct.
What does roughly mean? Because I'm looking for whether that's a commitment or not.
So we also heard that there was concern about blasting and digging a garage. And so the intent is to be able to have 3-story townhouses. But that height could adjust slightly depending on how the parking is constructed. So I'm not looking to do an 80-foot tall building.
So what's the tallest a building would be? I'm looking for a commitment here.
I believe it's less than 55 feet. Is that correct? Yeah, less than 55 feet. And again, that's measured from Connecticut Avenue.
So the height could be, if I remember correctly, roughly 65 feet, which is roughly 6 floors, 6
If,
stories.
if there was a penthouse,
No, penthouses are not part of the height.
right? Well, the 55 feet, I'm sorry. Oh, no, because the grade change from Connecticut Avenue
Correct,
up
which
to
I
the
think you
space
said was 12 feet.
plus the parking. So depending on where the elevation of the parking happens, it could be anywhere from 35 feet to 45 feet.
What could be 35 to 45 feet?
The
height of
actual building itself.
Relative to its grade.
Right.
Its own grade.
That's correct.
Say that again.
He's saying it could be 35 to 45 feet relative to its own grade. So taking out the factor of the grade change from the actual building height measuring point on Connecticut, which is significantly down slope, the building that's anticipated is going to be 35 to 45 feet from its relative grade in the alley.
Which might be higher as measured from Connecticut, but as experienced would be 35 to 45 feet.
Right.
Does that mean that the development is only on this alley lot?
That's correct.
So the existing building is it one building? I think it's lot 92. That's one building.
It's
That
one record.
building,
That's correct.
there's no change to that building.
It's a fully occupied retail building, and it's also a contributing historic structure.
So there's no change to that
No
building.
change to that building.
So then you're looking at a subdivision to combine the lots.
That's correct.
And that's how you get the measurement off of Connecticut Avenue.
That's correct.
So if we close the alley, if we were to vote today to close the alley, you could close the alley, and then what would happen to service delivery to the restaurants at 3500 Connecticut Avenue?
We would take ownership of the alley, but we would actually make no changes to the alley as they currently sit, because we would have to go through a fairly lengthy process, both through HBRB, through community engagement, and also with traffic planning and DDOT to be able to establish what the final project would look like and what those traffic and loading management plans would look like.
But I don't think the city would have any control over that, because listening to your answer, you have ownership of the alley. You could, or you're saying you'll keep the alley open for those restaurants, which are part of your property, but you don't have to.
Well, but in the DDOT approval, the DDOT approval specifies that we have to achieve HPRB approval, and also specifies that we have to meet other conditions. And so through those other conditions, the preservation of access is highly likely.
Yeah, but we live with, I want to say absolutes. What could happen? When the building is constructed, you're not going to maintain a easement behind the restaurants at 3500, are you?
We might, yes.
You might.
Yes. So there's a washing gas line that runs underneath that, and the cost to relocate that washing gas line is extraordinary. It's likely that we will preserve that section of alley so we don't have to relocate that. And respectfully, I think that's part of the chicken or egg situation that I'm in with this situation, is doing enough work to be able to quantify with all this feedback what the project can look like, noting that the outer boundaries of it is not intended to be more than 9 units or a certain height.
Well, typically when we get a proposed alley closing, we have more definitive development plans than I have right now. So what I have is it probably will be about 35 to 45 feet in height. Some of that depends on whether there's a garage that's underground or not. That you'll probably keep the alley access open to the restaurants, but that's not absolute, not guaranteed. And I mean, those are kind of two big unknowns. Mr. Utz, you look like you want to say something.
So the project will be subject to HPRB. So I think a height along the lines of, 45-foot building is likely to be the outcome of that review, which will be substantial. There will be a hearing on this project. There will be a significant amount of further engagement with the community, a trip to the ANC and potentially multiple trips. So there is a robust process that will be in place once, the owner.
After the council acts.
Yes, but still inevitable and a significant process that is unavoidable. So it is, I think a lot of the concerns that we've heard today would be that there wouldn't be any kind of oversight or ability to keep guardrails on the building that's going to be built on this site. But in actuality, there will be a significant process that will act as that set of guardrails, the HPRB review itself. Also, the zoning that comes in, the one that has the hearing in early December for the zoning commission for the map and text amendment for this property and then the corridor, will incorporate and already does incorporate the Connecticut Avenue design guidelines that were reviewed by HPRB and started to account for some of the sculpting of massing that has to be along the corridor because of the historic district. So that there will be a significant amount of kind of oversight and guardrails that will be on.
After the council acts,
Yeah.
which is of concern. But also when the zoning changes, so that reminds me, one of the concerns from neighbors is that the LLC that owns it now may not own it later. I'm sure you're committed to staying with the project, but I have seen where that has happened over time. So absent definitive plans or somehow a commitment, I mean, we could put a condition in the alley closing in the legislation. Absent that, this is all just based on the good word. And that is of concern. I note that DDOT, one of the conditions it has is that the applicant file a building permit application with the Department of Buildings or other discretionary approval. And the applicant's response is applicant requests that this condition is not applied to the alley closing. So that's just perpetuating the uncertainty until these other steps occur, which is after the council acts. Let me just add, Mr. Utz, I hate to say this, but I've been around a long time. You have, but not as long as me. And I remember all the controversy over alley closings done by the council where it didn't take into consideration loading. And I don't want to make that mistake. Loading is really important. And if those restaurants depend on the alley stub to be closed, I shouldn't say stub, but part of the L to be closed, then we need guarantee that loading is taken care of. Let me ask one other question. I'm a little bit unclear with what is happening to title. Now, I said earlier to the residents that the city doesn't have fee simple title, at least I don't think it does. But as you know, Mr. Utz, with an alley closing, title reverts to the abutting property owners. So as I'm looking at the site plan, which is part of the slide deck you had, it looks to me like the portion to be closed that is parallel to the fire station, which I guess is east-west, it says that all of that will revert to lot 811, not 50/50. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. The owner did not want to be responsible for maintaining that parcel and preferred that we be responsible for all of it.
Well, but it's also value to their land, but the owner has an opportunity to object and they haven't objected. And then the north-south portion, that would revert entirely to the LLC because you own both sides.
That's correct.
I may have another question, but let me turn to Councilmember Fruman.
All right, thank you very much. I'm not going to have particularly questions. I just want to put a couple of things on the table. I had as a question a question about your role at Eaton. I think everybody here acknowledges your deep roots and connection to the community, and I think that is important, Mr. Martin. There is this question about communication, and as I said to the previous panel, in my mind, that's before, and now here we are, and I want to foster communication between you and the neighbors without any judgment about what might have happened before, whether people turned up when they should have turned up, whether the offer was made. Here we are. Let's make sure we have a conversation. And I think we can do that. And I actually don't think the two sides are as far apart as it could feel, because one of the things that I'm hearing is concern about this being something very different than what is being put on the table. And one of the things that I'm hearing from you and your attorney is that there are other constraints that would limit changes to this project in the way that some of the neighbors might fear. And you are talking about a building. One of the themes from the neighbor testimony was that the building comply with existing zoning, and everything about the way you've been talking about it contemplates a building that would be consistent with the height and density requirements of the existing zoning. That might be a function of HBRB is never going to approve something that's bigger than that, and it doesn't make sense to build something that's bigger than that given practicalities. But let's get together and have a conversation that includes you and includes the neighbors about what is contemplated, what is possible, and how do we get from here to there. I am sensitive to the predicament you're in, Mr. Martin, in that building anything requires all kinds of investments along the way, and they're real investments. And so getting to some kind of clarity is what opens the door to making investments that can result in additional housing. So you feel like you need a certain amount of clarity, and I get that. The neighbors also feel like they need a certain amount of clarity about what is coming. Is there a way to square that circle? And I'm not trying today to have you commit to anything in particular other than a joint effort to try to come up with something that gives clarity, that can give clarity to both you and to the neighbors. So I look forward to working with you. I hope I'll end it in a form of a question. I hope you're willing to engage in a process like that.
Thank you, Councilmember Fruman, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to have a productive dialogue.
All right, with that, I turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman Mendelson.
I do not have any other questions for you at this time. Thank you both. And thank you as well, Ms. Milanovic.
Thank you.
All excused.
Thank you.
Let me turn to the government. We have Alyssa Vital, Deputy Zoning Administrator with the Department of Buildings, and Brant Miller, Manager of Policy and Legislative Affairs at DDOT. Ms. Vital, is it Vital or Vitali?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Vitali. Thank you.
Ms. Vitali, you want to proceed?
Certainly. Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson, council members, and staff of Committee of the Whole. I am Alyssa Vitali, Deputy Zoning Administrator of the District of Columbia at the Department of Buildings. I appear before you today to provide background information on Bill 26-166, closing of a public alley in Square 2068, SO 25-01801, Act of 2025. This bill was introduced by Councilmember Fruman. The purpose of this bill is to close a 15-foot wide L-shaped portion of the public alley system in Square 2068, bounded by Connecticut Avenue Northwest, Ordway Street Northwest, 30th Street Northwest, and Porter Street Northwest. This would facilitate the consolidation of lots and construction of a 3-story residential building. The applicant for this bill is 3500 CT LLC and Upton Heights LLC, who are represented by Goulston and Storrs. The Office of the Surveyor notified the relevant executive branch agencies and utility companies of this application on March 5th. To date, we have received comments from DC Water, Office of Planning, and Historic Preservation. And they
Interrupt. It says here, March 5th, 2023.
That's it. Let me confirm when the notices went out. They went out March 5th, 2025. I apologize. That's an error.
2025.
Correct.
All right. Continue.
Thank you. Again, we received comments from DC Water, Office of Planning and Historic Preservation, and they offered no objections. In a letter dated October 16th, 2025, the District Department of Transportation determined that there is no longer a transportation need for the alley area to be closed. DDOT is supportive of moving forward with legislation to close the alley, but objects to the recordation of the alley closure plat until a number of conditions are satisfied. These include the applicant compensating DDOT in the amount of $3,825 for the streetlight facilities that are in the existing alley network, that the applicant completes the power line connections and utility pole relocation, subject to DDOT approval via a public space construction permit, that the applicant file a building permit application with the Department of Buildings or obtain other discretionary approval from the Zoning Commission, Board of Zoning Adjustment, or Historic Preservation Review Board that would formalize the development proposal for the site that aligns with what has been presented in conjunction with this pending closure application. The Office of the Surveyor confirms the closure area on the plat is consistent with Figure 1 that was attached to DDOT's October 16th comments, that the applicant demonstrates that they've received approval for a tree preservation plan or a tree removal permit for the proposed development on private property. And finally, that the applicant provides the Department of Buildings with written confirmation from the owner of neighboring Lot 818 that they support the closure and will assume half of the alley area subject to the closure, abutting their property, or support the applicant's full control of the abutting alley area. We have not received comments back from DC Fire and EMS and Solid Waste. The utility companies were notified of this application also on March 5th, 2025. In a letter dated May 6th. And this is, I think there was an error in the Verizon letter, so let me correct this for the record. In a letter dated May 6th, 2025, Verizon objected to the closing. And in a letter dated March 6th, 2025, Washington Gas objected to the closing. To date, we have not received comments from Pepco. Pursuant to DC Official Code Section 9-202.02, Section 3, the DC Surveyor's Office notified the National Capital Planning Commission of this application on March 3rd, 2025, and to date, we have not received comments from NCPC. Pursuant to DC Official Code Section 9-202.02, Section 5, Advisory Neighborhood Commission 3C was notified of this application on March 3rd, 2025, and in a letter dated March 17th, 2025, ANC 3C indicated its support for this application. This concludes my testimony. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today and welcome any questions you may have regarding this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vitale. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Chairman Mendelson, members of the committee, staff, and district residents. My name is Brant Miller, Manager of Policy and Legislative Affairs at the District Department of Transportation, commonly referred to as DDOT. I am here today to present testimony on behalf of Mayor Muriel Bowser and DDOT Director Sharon Kirschbaum regarding Bill 260166, the closing of a public alley in Square 2068, Surveyor's Order 2501801, Act of 2025. The legislation would close the 15-foot 15-foot wide L-shaped portion of the alley system in square 2068, abutting lots 92, 811, and 818 to facilitate the consolidation of properties and construction by 3500 CT LLC and Uptown Heights LLC of a 3-story plus penthouse residential building. As outlined in the surveyor's order memorandum filed by DDOT with the DC Office of the Surveyor last week on October 16th, 2025, DDOT is supportive of the closure if the applicant meets the following conditions. They compensate DDOT in the amount of $3,825 for the street lighting facilities in the existing alley network. They complete the power line connections and utility pole relocation subject to DDOT approval via a public space construction permit. They file a building permit application with the Department of Buildings or other discretionary approval, formalizing the development proposal for the site that aligns with what has been presented in conjunction with this closure application. They demonstrate that they have received approval for a tree preservation plan or tree removal permits for the proposed development on private property. And they provide DOB with written confirmation from the owner of neighboring lot 818 that they support the closure and will assume half of the alley area subject to the closure abutting their property or support the applicant's full control of the abutting alley area. DDOT also asks that the Office of the Surveyor also confirm that the closure area on the plat is consistent with the plat that our agency has on file. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today and am available to answer any questions that you may have.
Six. Ms. Vitale, typically when we get testimony from the surveyor, and I realize you're not the surveyor, the testimony includes who has title and also what the value of the land is. So could you resubmit your statement with that information?
Certainly, we can provide that.
Okay, and from your knowledge, does it sound like I'm correct that the title is not vested in the district?
I do not believe that we've prepared the ownership statement at this time, which is why it was not included with our testimony. We can conduct that research and provide that information.
Okay, so if you would resubmit the statement with the who has title and the value of the land, as is typically included. Mr. Miller, are there trees on this lot?
We have a record of a special tree on lot 8. Oh gosh, the lot that is abutted by the L-shaped alley.
811.
811,
the
yes,
alley that
thank
they
you.
want to develop.
We have a record of a special tree on lot 811. I believe satellite imagery may not show a tree there. So as long as an arborist inspects the site and there is no special tree on the property, then they would not need to have the special tree permit.
Okay, do you want to get back to us with that information since you wanted a condition?
Yes.
The other question I have for you, it's a bit of a mystery here that the conditions do not speak to loading. So if I look at the testimony from the applicant's transportation consultant, and give me a second because it would have helped if I'd had it in front of me. The portions of the alley that are proposed to be closed primarily serve delivery vehicles for the restaurants that make up 3500 Connecticut Avenue. Those delivery vehicles stop in the north-south portion of the alley to be closed. And loading is not addressed in DDOT's comments.
That's correct. Because
you guys don't care about loading.
I would not agree with that. A description of our values. No, we do care about loading. The conditions in the surveyor's order memorandum don't mention loading because I believe that loading is possible from the front and the other segments of the alley. But we can follow up with you about the loading concerns after the hearing.
Well, I repeat, and if you want, we can give you a copy of the testimony. The delivery vehicles stop in the north-south portion of the alley to be closed. And I don't think it's DDOT's policy that you want loading and unloading from the front of an establishment, especially when it's on a major arterial like Connecticut Avenue. So maybe you could revisit that and give us comments?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Councilmember Fruman?
Thank you very much, and thank you for your testimony. I think the takeaway from all the list of different things is that there's work to be done here. There are conditions, there are issues that the chairman has raised, and I think that's all very healthy. I look forward to working in the next month to try to meet with different people and take note of all the different issues that have been raised and see if we can't find a path that squares the circle. The chairman sort of rhetorically said if we were going to vote on this today, which I a little bit gasped, but we're not going to vote on this today. This is the hearing. The next step in the process would be a markup, and then the next step in the process would be for it to be agendized for legislative meeting. And so we're on a path. We're not at the end of that path, even on this step in the process. And let's all work together, including our government witnesses, to make sure that we've found a way that addresses the issues that have been raised. And with that, I thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Are you done? I have no other questions for you. So each of you will get back with additional information.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to close out this hearing. I will say this, that usually when we have an alley closing, we have more information, more definitive development plans, just much more with regard to all of the objections having been resolved, commitments from the developer to resolve objections. I think this is not a question. I think I heard that at least one of the utilities has not gotten back to the surveyor. So this feels a little premature to me. That doesn't mean to anybody, like residents who are opposed, that they should get excited and happy about that. But there does need to be more information. The record, as I indicated at the beginning, is open for 2 weeks. And what that means, we have to file a record after a hearing. And so what we get in those 2 weeks is what we have to file in the record. That does not mean that the council shuts its doors. We're not like the zoning commission or like a court. And if something comes in after that, we won't look at it. I suspect Councilmember Fruman looks at all of his mail. But for purposes of the record, 5 p.m. on November 6th. I want to thank all of the witnesses who've testified. The time is, I'll figure it out, 1:32 p.m. and this hearing is adjourned. We will start our next hearing as soon as we're ready.
Tomas call you?
Not that I know of.
Why? He is told that Brand is having hearing on 29th. Yes.
Sure. I'm calling to order this hearing. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council, Chair of the Committee of the Whole. This is a public hearing by the Committee of the Whole. And the topic today is PR 26-94, entitled Installation of Statue of Bernardo de Galvez Commemorative Work Approval Resolution of 2025. Today is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. The time is 1:37 in the afternoon. This hearing was scheduled to start at 12:45. And we just finished a previous hearing, and we have another hearing scheduled for after this. The stated purpose of PR 26-94, PR stands for Proposed Resolution, is to approve the installation of a commemorative work located in public space adjacent to the Embassy of Spain at 2375 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest. This will be a statue to be known as Bernardo de Galvez, a friend of independence. Under the Commemorative Works Act, a law of the District of Columbia, the sponsor of a proposed commemorative work on public space may submit an application through the Office of Planning and the Commemorative Works Committee. The Commemorative Works Committee acts in an advisory capacity to the mayor and the council and may recommend an application for approval, which it did on December 15th, 2023. The council must approve a proposed commemorative work by resolution or act. The legislation was introduced at the request of the mayor on February 27th, 2025. I feel a little apologetic that today is October 23rd, so we've had this for a few months. But I think it's important that we have this opportunity for the public to comment and see if there are any concerns about this proposed commemorative work, and then proceed. The record in this matter will be open until November 3rd. The record will close at 5 p.m. on, I believe it's Monday, November 3rd, 2025. So it's a little less than 2 weeks. We have two witnesses. The first is Robbie Woodland, Commissioner with ANC HC06. Is she here? All right, apparently she was on the line. Oh, there she is.
Yes, sir, I'm here. Good morning.
All right, why don't you proceed, please?
Okay. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Commissioner Robbie Woodland, and I represent Ward 8. I'm here to speak truthfully and directly about why the statue of Bernardo de Galvez has no rightful place in Washington, D.C. To be clear, Galvez was not a Washingtonian, not an American, and certainly not a champion of freedom for all people. He was a Spanish colonial governor, a representative of an empire that enslaved Africans, exploited indigenous people, and traded in human lives. While history records that he aided the American Revolution, his allegiance was never to liberty. It was to the interests of Spain, another colonizer fighting Britain for control over stolen land. Placing his statue in the capital of this nation, especially in a city built by enslaved Africans whose descendants still struggle for equity and representation, sends the wrong message, especially at a time like this. It tells our children that foreign aristocrats deserve honor here more than the people who actually fought for justice, education, and civil rights on this very soil. Washington, D.C. should be telling our story, the story of Frederick Douglass, Nannie Helen Burroughs, Charles Hamilton Houston, and the unnamed hands that built these monuments and halls of power. Every statue we erect should be a reflection of truth and purpose, not diplomacy and tokenism. We cannot continue to elevate figures who uphold systems of oppression while ignoring those who tore them down. The statue of Bernardo de Galvez may honor the politics of another nation, but it dishonors the legacy of this one, especially the legacy of Black Washingtonians who have never been fully recognized. I urge the council to please reevaluate this monument and redirect that honor towards the people whose sacrifices made DC what it is today, resilient, rooted, and unafraid to stand in truth. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you provide us with a copy of your statement, please?
Yes, sir. I'll email it before the close of business today.
Great, thank you. I don't have any other questions for you. Let me call David Lieb, who is Senior Counsel with the Office of Planning.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson,
Afternoon.
staff of the Committee of the Whole. I'm David Lieb, Senior Counsel in the DC Office of Planning. I am pleased to testify on PR 2694, the installation of the statue. Forgive me, my written testimony says statute. I should know the difference, of Bernardo de Galvez commemorative work approval resolution of 2025. The statue is located along 24th Street in the landscaped area between the sidewalk and Spanish Embassy. And including the pedestal, it stands just 90 inches or 6.5 feet tall. Despite its relatively small size and location in an area that reads as semi-private, the statue requires council approval because it is located in public space owned by the district. At its July 2023 meeting, the Commemorative Works Committee, which is chaired by the Director of the Office of Planning, voted to recommend approval of the proposed installation, considering its suitability for the location, construction materials, subject matter, and maintenance plans. The Public Space Committee, Historic Preservation, and ANC2A also reviewed and recommended approval of the proposed installation. For these reasons, the Office of Planning supports approval of PR 26-94. I appreciate the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do you know why, if the Commemorative Works Committee approved this in July 2023, we did not receive it until February of this year?
No, I don't have specific information about that, Chairman Mendelson. The law provides for the Commemorative Works Committee to transmit its recommendations to both the mayor and the council, bless you, to both the mayor and the council. At that point, it can be, the mayor can submit a proposed resolution to approve it, or a council member can introduce legislation to approve it. And there is no deadline on those submissions, although I take your point that it did take some time to find its way here.
And I need to be careful because we've had this for what, 8 months? And we, the council, are just now getting to the hearing.
I was not going to mention that, Chairman.
I know, but I did. So let me see if I understand this. It's a small statue. It is to be adjacent to the property of the Embassy of Spain. That's on Pennsylvania Avenue. Looks to me like that's a row house.
So there are a series of row houses that then have a taller building coming up behind them. The row houses themselves are a landmark, and the commemorative work is at the corner of 24th and Pennsylvania, in the sort of what's referred to through sort of a very strange term in district parlance as the public parking area, which is the publicly owned land that sits in front of a lot of the buildings and sort of reads like the front yard of those buildings.
Okay. Well, there is, I think this is the report of the Commemorative Works Committee. There's looks like a picture, but since it hasn't been installed, I'm assuming it's a rendering, and that's fairly accurate.
I want to clarify.
Page 19.
This work actually was installed, I believe, in 2019 and is coming in for an after the fact approval. I think that the embassy was unaware of the need for the approval. And so it in fact has been installed. So they're asking for after the fact approval. Again, I think the situation created by the configuration of these properties has the potential to create some confusion about who has control of the land.
Sure.
So I think that's probably the situation here.
Yeah, I'm looking at, I think it's a Google Street View. It looks like it's behind a fence, an existing fence.
That's correct. I've driven by it, but yes, that's what I see.
So if it's been there, have you heard any objections from the public?
I heard the testimony just now. I don't believe our office has heard any. I can't say that definitively. I'm certainly happy to go back and check, but I have not heard any
And
myself.
since you're representing Office of Planning, Commemorative Works reported to the Office of Planning, I'm assuming that there was no dissent within the Commemorative Works Committee.
My understanding is that there was no dissent. No.
Okay. Any other questions? I don't think I have any other questions for you.
Okay.
So thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
That's going to conclude this hearing. This has been a hearing on PR 26-94, installation of statue of Bernardo de Galvez, commemorative work approval resolution of 2025. The record will close at 5 p.m. on November 3rd. The time is 1:48 p.m. and this hearing, public hearing, is adjourned. See if we can get the next one going. Make it 4, Marquez. I'm calling to order this hearing. This is a public hearing of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. This is our third public hearing of today, which is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. The time is 1:51 p.m. We're in room 412 of the Johnny Wilson Building. The subject of this hearing is PR 26-310, entitled Transfer of Jurisdiction of Portions of U.S. Reservation 343C and 343D, SO 23-03016, approval resolution of 2025. PR stands for proposed resolution. SO, I believe, is surveyor's order. It's how they number their files. The stated purpose of PR 26-310 is to approve the transfer of jurisdiction over portions of U.S. reservations 343C and 343D. transfer from the National Park Service to the District of Columbia for uses associated with the 11th Street Bridge project. The 11th Street Bridge project, 11th Street Bridge Park project, which is privately managed and funded with support from the district, will use abandoned piers of the old 11th Street Bridge over the Anacostia River to create an elevated park linking historic Anacostia with the Navy Yard. The bridge span will be located on various parcels of land and in the river owned by the district and the National Park Service. The purpose of this hearing is to determine whether there are any objections or issues with regard to the proposed transfer. The legislation was introduced at the request of the mayor on September 17th, 2025. The record in this matter will close at 5 p.m. on Monday, November 3rd, 2025. So that's a little less than 2 weeks. Anyone who wishes to submit comments after today's hearing has until 5 p.m. November 3rd to do so. We have 3 witnesses. I'm going to call them all up at the same time. Scott Kratz, who is President and CEO of Building Bridges Across the River. Brant Miller, who is Manager of Policy and Legislative Affairs at DDOT. And Elisa Vitale, who is Deputy Zoning Administrator at the Department of Buildings. Mr. Kratz, you're up first.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson, members of the committee and staff. My testimony is in regards to PR 26310. My name is Scott Kratz. I'm the president and CEO of Building Bridges Across the River, a Ward 8-based nonprofit that for the last 12 years has partnered with the District Department of Transportation to realize the 11th Street Bridge Park. This transformational project will help reconnect long divided neighborhoods on both sides of the river. Informed by over 1,000 stakeholder meetings, the 11th Street Bridge Park has engaged local residents, shaping every element of the park's design and impact. I'm happy to report that we're currently at 100% design, 100% funded, and plan to solicit our general contractor at the end of the year. Working with local residents, partner nonprofits, and the district government, we've made great progress. For the last 4 years, we've worked with DDOT and the National Park Service to secure this transfer of jurisdictional authority for the Poplar Point property where the bridge park lands east of the river. This area is currently Anacostia Park and will be the location of the community requested bridge park programming of an environmental education center, urban agriculture gardens, and river amphitheater. We have worked closely with the National Park Service to realize our shared goal to preserve the natural and cultural resources and values of the national park system for the enjoyment, education, and inspiration of this and future generations. The Bridge Park will help manifest this goal and bring hundreds of thousands of visitors to a jewel of the national park system, Anacostia Park. This is a project we should all be proud of. Indeed, municipalities across the country are looking to the work in the district to build similar just civic spaces. In closing, I'd like to express gratitude to the Council of District of Columbia for supporting this community-driven civic space that reflects a new era of connected communities here in the District of Columbia. Thank you for investing in our communities, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
One question for starters. I don't have a copy of your testimony. Would you submit it?
Absolutely, by the end of the day.
Thank you. I'll have some other questions, but let me turn to Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson, members of the committee, staff, and district residents. My name is Brant Miller, Manager of Policy and Legislative Affairs at the District Department of Transportation, commonly referred to as DDOT. I'm here today to present testimony on behalf of Mayor Muriel Bowser and DDOT Director Sharon Kirschbaum regarding PR 260310, the transfer of jurisdiction of portions of U.S. reservations 343C and 343D, Surveyor's Order 2303016, Approval Resolution of 2025. This proposed resolution would approve the transfer of jurisdiction of portions of U.S. Reservations 343C and 343D from the National Park Service, or NPS, to the district for transportation and recreational uses associated with the 11th Street Bridge Park project. As you know, the 11th Street Bridge Park is more than a park project. It represents an exciting opportunity to create a more equitable, inclusive, and connected Washington, D.C. by reconnecting communities east and west of the Anacostia River. DDOT is working in partnership with the DC Department of Parks and Recreation, or DPR, and Building Bridges Across the River, or BBAR, to construct the district's first elevated park that will span the Anacostia and serve as a venue for healthy recreation, environmental education, and the arts. In order to move forward with this project, a portion of the land on the eastern side of the Anacostia River must be transferred from NPS to the district, which this proposed resolution would approve. The National Capital Planning Commission, or NCPC, approved the transfer in a letter dated December 4th, 2020, and NPS likewise expressed their support in a letter dated August 31st by testimony for an entry into the hearing record. This transfer must also occur relatively quickly, as DDOT cannot solicit a general contractor until the transfer is complete. We are aiming to open the solicitation before the end of calendar year 2025 to remain on schedule for the project. We hope that the council will act swiftly to implement this transfer by approving this proposed resolution. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
How come it took so long to get to us? The mayor introduced this legislation in September.
We've been developing the resolution for a little while before it was transmitted to the council. I think the recess put us behind a little bit. But besides that, we've just been working with BBAR and with our with IPMA to make sure that everything was squared away before we could submit the proposed resolution.
There are 41 lines to the resolution, which includes blank lines and the signature line. Okay, I just want to note, we're being pressed to do this quickly, but we didn't get it until September. Ms. Vitale?
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson, council members, and staff of the Committee of the Whole. I am Elisa Vitale, Deputy Zoning Administrator of the District of Columbia at the Department of Buildings. I appear before you today to provide background information on Resolution 26-310, Transfer of Jurisdiction of Portions of U.S. Reservations 343C and 343D, SO 23-03016, Approval Resolution of 2025. This resolution was introduced by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor. The purpose of this resolution is to approve the transfer of jurisdiction over portions of U.S. Reservation 343C and 343D from the National Park Service to the District of Columbia for uses associated with the 11th Street Bridge Park project. The 11th Street Bridge Park project, which is privately managed and funded with support from the district, will use abandoned piers of the old 11th Street Bridge over the Anacostia River to create an elevated park linking historic Anacostia with the Navy Yard. The applicants for this resolution are the District Department of Transportation and the National Park Service. The Office of the Surveyor notified the relevant executive branch agencies of this application on May 16th, 2025. To date, we have not received comments from DC Fire EMS and Solid Waste. The remaining executive branch agencies have no objections. The utility companies were notified of the application on May 16th, 2025, and to date, we have not received comments from Pepco, but the remaining utility companies have no objections. Pursuant to DC Official Code Section 9-202.02, Section 3, the DC Surveyor's Office notified the National Capital Planning Commission of this application on May 16th, 2025. And actually, in a commission action dated December 3rd, 2020, NCPC approved the transfer of jurisdiction of approximately 3 acres from the National Park Service to the District Department of Transportation for the 11th Street Bridge Park project. Pursuant to DC Official Code Section 9-202.02, Section 5, Advisory Neighborhood Commission 8A was notified of this application on March 16th, 2025, and in a letter dated September 16th, 2025, ANC indicated its support for this application. This concludes my testimony. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today and welcome any questions you may have regarding this matter. Thank you.
So are there any concerns from the government with regard to this transfer? Any objections that need to be resolved?
No concerns or objections from the Office of the Surveyor.
None from DDOT.
So, we've had all this conversation. Where exactly are we talking about?
Do you mean, what exactly, what's the land or?
Like as I'm driving through the city, where is this?
Where is this?
Yeah.
So this is where the 11th Street Bridge Park lands east of the river. So it's roughly bound by Marion Barry Jr. Avenue, Anacostia Drive, and the freeway on-ramp from the 11th Street local bridge. That triangular plot of land plus a.
So it's on the
eastern side of the river. So
eastern side of the
yep,
river?
on the Anacostia side.
Marionberry, which used to be Good Hope Road.
But that terminates into Anacostia Drive. If you take Marionberry from historic Anacostia down to the river, it terminates in Anacostia Drive. And then bound by the 11th Street local bridge and then the freeway on-ramp you can take if you're headed eastbound on the 11th Street local bridge onto 295 headed south. There's also an additional small strip of land that is between Anacostia Drive and the seawall, the adjacent to the river. The National Park Service will retain control of Anacostia Drive itself.
About how much land are we talking about?
About 3 acres.
So I'm looking at this plat, which is attached to Mr. Miller's testimony. There's blue, there's pink, and there's green and white. So what's the blue? The blue's being transferred?
The different colors represent different uses. So the blue is for recreational purposes. The pink is for transportation purposes. And air rights, I believe, are in green. So it's all of the hashed land, but they're just listed as being for different purposes on the plat.
Okay, the green is actually looks like it's dots, not hashed.
Yes, that is correct. It is
But
dots.
the green is part of what's being transferred.
Yes, that is correct.
The green, the red, and the blue.
Yes.
Talk to me again about timing. So DDOT's putting an RFP out?
Correct. As soon as the resolution is complete, yes.
And the RFP has to get out by when?
Our goal is by the end of this calendar year. We would ideally like to advertise in November, but also December is possible.
Okay. And what's the RFP for? Because the private entity is doing the development, aren't I correct?
DDOT, excuse me, DDOT will be doing the solicitation for the general contractor for the construction of the entire park. So the city is doing the solicitation for the construction of the park. After the park is complete, the district will continue to own the asset. They will own the park itself. And then the division of responsibility will be between DDOT and Building Bridges Across the River. This might be more information than you can know, but the DDOT will be responsible, the city will be responsible for the infrastructure of the park, the piers, the pilings, the truss, and Building Bridges Across the River will be responsible for everything above the concrete deck. So we'll be responsible for the staffing, the cleaning, programming, security, all of that will be on us.
DDOT is issuing the RFP for the construction, but the funding is from the money that Building Bridges has raised. Am I correct?
It is a blend. So it is a combination of the funds that the district has put in as part of DDOT's 5-year capital budget, matched with the dollars that we have secured.
And between the two, that's why you say it's 100% funded.
Correct.
Give me just a second.
Sure.
I don't think I have any other questions for y'all. Thank you for your patience, especially two of you who have, this is your second hearing today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you for having to wait for this hearing. As I said at the beginning, the record in this matter will close at 5 p.m. on Monday, November 3rd, 2025. The time is 2:08 p.m. and this hearing is adjourned.